Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I am your host, Sam Fain, and I am joined this week, once again, thankfully, gratefully, by none other than JJ Lendl. JJ, how are you?
I'm good. It's been too long. I feel like it's been ages since I've been in the Fates Wide Wheel hot seat. Uh, um, but I'm glad to be here. I'm feeling a little congested, so I apologize if I sound like I'm at less than 100% vocally. Maybe I'll just go for more of a sedated sound. Uh, kind of just sort of try to hit a different tone for everybody this week.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
See how long that lasts.
No, I hear you. I'm feeling a little run down myself. I think as everybody knows, my plate has been quite full recently. But I'm thrilled to be here and be doing this with you. This is what the public wants, JJ. All right. The public has spoken. I have heard it. People have asked, where is JJ? When are you guys going to talk about the finale together? And that's going to happen right now. But before we talk about the finale, I want to do something because it's been a while since I had the chance to do this. And I feel like now is the perfect time for it, quite frankly. Because there is not one, not two, but three new Patreon members that I want to give shout outs to. And in the process, I figure I'm just going to give shout outs to the whole crew. So, real quick, here we go. We'll start with the newest, Mr. Tom Saliva. I hope I pronounced that right. Caroline Wolf, Lee Jamilkowski, Sophie Gilbert, MercuryBeat, the mental health warrior from Michigan, Max Blaska, QLP, James Gould, Christina Geis, Brackmang, Heather Strabiak, Stewpot 47, Lady Eternal, Carolyn, Michelle Hoffman, Jason Geis, Joanne Bartlett, Adrian Sal, Brian McDreadful, Damon Sugamelli, Larry Trujillo, Amy Holtcamp, Christopher Redmon, Oddly Specific with Audra, Dana Bius. Thank you all so much. I am so blown over by the support for the show in that respect. You help to keep the lights on, to say the very least. The support from all of the viewers and listeners and folks that are taking the time to comment or send emails, like one Stephen Palmer. Thank you, Stephen, for your lovely email. I appreciate it. Thank you, Max, for your recent messages as well. Everyone that's taken the time to stop over and comment on the YouTube videos, all of the new subscribers on YouTube, all of the new followers on Instagram. I cannot thank you enough for the support. It's definitely the type of thing that helps to keep me going when there are so many other things going on. And in those weeks when I'm literally recording close to 10 hours worth of, interviews and reviews, et cetera, it's always nice to be able to have that support. And patrons, you genuinely make it all possible. I don't have to pay for any hosting fees or anything like that because of you. So thank you so much for that support. And if you would like to become a patron, like I said, I truly appreciate the support. It allows me to do this. But before you do, let's right some wrongs. All right. I want you to take a look around your community. I want you to see if there's some way that you can help, whether that's volunteering your time, donating some canned goods, some gloves, a clothing drive, whatever the case may be, or if you're in the position to do so, financial donation. In the world at large, of course, the Trevor Project, they are doing essential work in supporting trans youth in this country. And obviously, if you read the headlines, you know how incredibly important that is right now, and the dramatic increase in calls that they have received just over the past couple of weeks. So will always be a cause near and dear to my heart, and they certainly deserve our support. Doctors Without Borders, on a global scale, the work that they do is so incredibly important and vital, sometimes in horrific circumstances, quite frankly, most of the time under horrific circumstances. They are one of the finest charitable organizations in the world. You can look it up. It is true. And of course, in tribute to our dear friend Matt Dale, I would also like to mention the Epilepsy Society in the UK. They've been misattributing it to the Epilepsy Foundation UK because I think that was something that I had read in association with Matt at one point, but it's actually the Epilepsy Society. A donation in Matt's name would be lovely and awesome and a wonderful way to honor his memory. If after all that, of course, you still want to support Fates Wide Wheel and you're still in a position to do so, head over to patreon.com/FatesWideWheel. You can support at any level and you will gain access to all of the behind the scenes videos with JJ about the posters, as well as exclusive early access to interview videos that are going to be coming out soon. For instance, Patreon subscribers were able to watch the Raymond Lee interview 2 days before it dropped on the YouTube channel. So there will be opportunities to do that again in the very, very, very near future. And you will also get a shout out on Fates Wide Wheel for new Patreon subscribers. And of course, every once in a while, I'll just shout you out anyway, just for the heck of it, because I just love you so much and I appreciate it. So thank you so much. Whether it's, on the video or audio or in the show notes, you'll see your name and you'll have my gratitude in all humility, quite frankly, because it is pretty amazing to me still that people support the show in that way. So thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And making this endeavor possible to continue is something that some people may question. But for the most part, I'd like to think that it's a good thing and that we're spreading a little joy, a little bit of happiness, and we're getting to talk about things that we love. Right, JJ?
I 100% agree with every statement and sentiment. Yes, wonderful.
And of course, why save it for the end? You can also always head over to jjlendl.com, and whether you go directly to his storefront or you go to the Fates Wide Wheel storefront, there is just a plethora of incredible artwork and merchandise.
I got one on. Actually,
right? Me too. Look at that.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, Secret History, Fates Wide Wheel hat. You got all sorts of great stuff. And of course, it's not just Quantum Leap because, here at Fates Wide Wheel, we can go anywhere we like, any win we like. And so there's lots of other great stuff over there, whether you're looking for some Star Wars, some Star Trek, some X-Files, etc. There's going to be some other cool stuff there soon, I'm pretty sure as well. Right?
I think that's safe to say. Yeah.
And you could just walk right into your Target and pick up a Star Wars puzzle, right? There are puzzles with your art.
Yeah. Yes.
So stay tuned. Towards the end of the show, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, actually, believe it or not. And we got some exciting stuff brewing, as been requested by a couple of wonderful patrons and commenters. So stay tuned for that. But before we talk about anything else, look, the main event tonight, as far as I'm concerned, and again, this is something that has been requested by more than 2 people, and that is they want to know, JJ, what you thought of the 2-episode, 2-hour season finale of Quantum Leap As the World Burns and Against Time. Now, your incredible posters aside, which have gotten rave reviews, mind you, I would love to know what you thought. We'll go ahead and start with As the World Burns. I thought it was a fantastic episode for many reasons. People know that, you can hear my review. I want to hear what you think.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for anybody who is interested in what I have to say. That boggles my mind. And it was very nice to see the positive reactions to the poster artwork for the episodes, especially because I was pulling double duty that week since they debuted on the same day. So I'll start by saying this. Generally, I will only watch these episodes once, just because of my schedule. Because I got a lot of things going on. And then, of course, after the fact, I'll try to get back and watch them again. Both of these episodes I immediately watched again because I thought that they were peak series storytelling, and we can start with the first hour of the 2-part finale, which I don't know was envisioned as being a 2-part finale.
It was not. It was not initially,
but it
envisioned
worked
that way
so well in that format. I found, even though it very much was, one adventure after another adventure, but they were so linked. But you could say that about the whole season, and I think that I guess I would start off by saying that one of the things that impressed me most about both episodes was how they brought so much of what we had seen in the previous 11 episodes together, and of course from season 1. But As the World Burns, I thought was strong in all of those typical Quantum Leap columns that you would want it to be strong in. It was a premise which hit the ground running. It's like, Ben is a firefighter. Okay, got it. Check. And then, of course, immediately we work in the mythology of the season, which is Hannah. And so, right from the start, we're bringing in these two really strong story points, which is the leap itself, and then working in the overarching, theme of the season. And I really liked the episode. I was really impressed by aspects of the episode that I wasn't necessarily looking to be impressed by. There was a lot of really great special effects in the episode and special effects that might have not been clocked by a lot of viewers. So, they spend a lot of time shooting on the Universal backlot for Quantum Leap, almost obsessively, which is kind of fun. Because they, it's almost like they have a checklist of different places in the backlot that they want to shoot. And, from my perspective, I watch these episodes and knowing that I'm going to create poster art for them, I'm looking for references. And I've talked about this before in the behind the scenes Patreon videos. So for As the World Burns, I was interested in reference for the Excelsior building, which they allude to. So I'm looking at this building and I'm trying to figure out, okay, where is this building on the backlot? And I realized that the base of the building that they use is on the backlot. It's the Macy's building, which is part of that New York block. But there's this shot where they start at the top of the building where you see the fire and they pan down to the front. And that's all. It's fake. It's, that building does not exist on the lot like that. And it's a completely beautiful, seamless shot into the action of the firefighters on the ground and the crowds around there. And, if you go back and watch the episode, and it's such a wonderful establishing shot of a building that doesn't exist. And it's one of those special effects that I love because it's a special effect that isn't a special effect. Like, you don't think of it as a special effect. It looks like they were shooting on location at this tall apartment building and just panned down to the front, which they didn't. The building doesn't exist on the backlot. So it was things like that in the episode which really blew my mind, since I had to get into it a little bit to be able to find some reference imagery for the posters. So getting a little into the nitty gritty here, but just to show you how taken I was with this particular hour of television.
Well, and it's made all the more remarkable by the fact that they were under such a time crunch.
Absolutely.
The turnaround time on these episodes was so tight. And I agree. No, I think it's wonderful. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I just think that the emotional arc of this season was so expertly tied up. And you have to, and I think part of the bow was tied up in this episode because while we see Hannah again at the very end of 13, this is sort of the climax of that relationship between her and Ben. And it's sort of the emotional climax, because something that the show does, which I think is genius, is it kind of shifts to another relationship, which is between Ben and her son, and makes that a big focus of the final hour, which is something that, unless you're Sam, because Sam absolutely knew something was going to go on with that. You wouldn't have even be thinking about that.
Right.
So, no, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought that and I've said this previously for the last couple of episodes that aired when we talked about them, is that I feel like the show has really found the sweet spot in terms of the leap parts of the episodes and the project parts of the episodes. And these two episodes were such a wonderful culmination of that mastery, because everything is connected at this point. And, what's happening in the past is affecting the future. And there's a lot of back and forth communication there. And especially when things are starting to go wonky at the project, it's of course going to affect what's going on at the leap. And, in this episode, immediately we're dealing with the aftermath of Magic announcing that he is resigning from the project.
Right.
And so, that's affecting the way that Addison is handling the leap. It's affecting everything that's happening at HQ. And I just felt like the script was so tight for this episode. And at the same time, the acting just really elevated it. And you're going to know the actor's name, but I don't. The actor who plays Hannah's son. But
Jeffrey. Oh, yeah. Wyatt Parker.
And I just thought that he, in a show of wonderful performances, like, he just shined through so well. The scene where he and Ben are in the apartment and they have to climb out onto the ledge and do the jump.
Yeah.
It was so impactful, and I just thought it was so well played and in the moment. And again, the special effects, the direction, everything was there. What I'd say is, especially for that first hour of the finale, it doesn't feel like network television to me. Like,
yeah,
it feels like you're watching something that is on a premium streaming channel, and that's that's like a big compliment as far as I'm concerned, because those kind of shows are produced under very different circumstances.
right.
I was watching
more money, more time.
Yes, exactly. I was watching some behind the scenes stuff recently for House of the Dragon, which is a show on HBO, which has a $1 budget. And they were talking about how, we decided to start production on the season by doing some scenes from episode 6 of 10. And it's like, good for you guys. Like,
right.
Because they've got all their scripts written. They've got all their story points. They've been in pre-production for probably over a year, building sets and doing previs and all the things that if you're on a network show, you are not going to have a chance to do. I mean, you're working on scripts, a little bit ahead of time, but it's not, you're not conceiving of a complete season of scripts prior to the start of production. It's just not the way that it works. And for them to be able to bring everything together and to just have the mastery of that storytelling, just sort of make it seem like they were, they're under the similar circumstances of House of the Dragon, where they're like, we started with this scene because we knew that, it would be good for the actors because later on this would happen, and then earlier this would happen. And yeah, that would be one of the bigger compliments that I would pay the season overall, but certainly like the culmination of these last 2 episodes.
Yeah, I think that's a astute observation, quite frankly, because I've remarked a couple of times that the show genuinely just feels like none other on television, and I've kind of hedged before by adding, it's unlike anything on network television, but I feel like it really has grown beyond that, and it is a situation where you look at the show and you think like, if they had more time and more money, it would rival any of these, other shows. And so the fact that they're able to do what they're able to do under the circumstances, especially considering the circumstances of season 2. I mean, you think about the fact that, they had no break. They were basically working on season 2 while season 1 was still being wrapped up, and shot. Right. They start filming season 2 almost immediately after season 1 wraps. And then, in the midst of filming the 7th episode, it becomes clear that there's going to be a writer's strike. Episode 8 is filmed without writers. And then they go away. And while they are gone, there's the SAG strike. There's all of this turmoil. They come back and the show starts airing, even before the strikes resolve, obviously. And almost immediately the show is met with acclaim. That there are fans that weren't on board for season 1 that are now on board for season 2. There are people that followed the show through season 1 and enjoyed season 1, loved season 1 even, and are seeing season 2 as being better in every way. Yeah. And then, 4 or 5 episodes in, it's like, okay, the strikes are over. We got to get back to work, and we're going to, we got to be in front of a camera in like 2 weeks, or whatever it was. So it's like, all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you have to write the final 5 of the season and get them filmed as quickly as possible because, after, episode 8 airs, you're going to come back, in like 8 weeks.
Right. Yeah. It's so impressive.
Yeah.
And I just felt, man, they're just running on all cylinders for the last 5. And especially listen, the night that the final 2 episodes aired, something that I was really happy to see was how long, Quantum Leap was trending online.
Yeah.
It was trending on Twitter, and these episodes got universal acclaim. Everybody that I saw was just sort of gobsmacked at how good they were. And not because what came before wasn't good, but I think that people had pretty high expectations, but they were surpassed. And it's so nice to see that. And it's nice to you believe in a show and you champion a show, and then you just see the show hit its full stride here towards the end of the season. And it's a good feeling. Like as just a fan, it's such a great feeling because you believe in a show and you're really invested in the characters and the storytelling, and to just see the creative team behind it to just just get all 10s for
right.
for the Olympic dive. It's really great. I've gotten away from specifics here for the episodes and have gotten really.
That's all right.
Macro.
I have a couple of questions if you want to focus stuff. So I'm curious, one of my favorite scenes for As the World Burns was the scene between Addison and Hannah in the hallway when Hannah's trapped under the rubble. I would love to get your thoughts on that scene and the work between Caitlin and Eliza.
I think about, I think about it 2 ways. You think about it from the character perspective, because you've got, Hannah basically putting her, she's in this incredibly life-threatening situation, and she has got it just says so much about the character where she's got to put herself out there to someone who she kind of has to trust exists.
Right.
Can't see. Which is incredible. It's just such an incredible sort of premise of a scene where it's my time traveling boyfriend's imaginary friend is here, and
yeah,
and I need to impart them with this information, and then on the acting side of it, to be able to because obviously to play a scene like that. Caitlin is in front of you. You can see Caitlin.
Right.
But to be able to play it in a way where you're just sort of having to trust that the person is there. And then, of course, on the other side of it, and it's something that, Dean Stockwell got to do a lot in the original series where, I can't remember how many times Sam would be like, Sam, could you just go and be with them? And, Al would be like, they can't see me. He said, I know, just go and just be with them. It'll make me feel better. It's like, okay.
Right.
And you're trying to give a pep talk to somebody who cannot see you, who doesn't know you exist. This kind of took that traditional Quantum Leap scene and turned it on its head. Yeah. Because you have someone who is in that time who is trusting that this person is there, and you're sort of giving them the pep talk as you're being crushed under under the remains of the building
Right.
of the building ceiling. And so it was interesting to see. It was kind of, for me, like seeing those typical scenes where Al is kind of being there for someone, and Addison is being there for her, but Hannah has a mission with this moment. She's like, I need you to see this, and I need you to understand these things, and the things that I'm talking about have to do with this really particular quantum equation, but they also really have to do with the relationship that you and Ben have. And
Yeah.
you folks, this is what I thought was really interesting about the entire dynamic that was created over the course of the season, and particularly this episode. Hannah she's in a position to have such sage wisdom for these other characters, because the other characters are like living on fast forward. Everything is happening to them so fast. Everything is one day after the other. Hannah has had 30 years to parse out all of the information that she's gotten, all the interactions that she's had with Ben, every story, every anecdote that he has been able to tell her in the short times that they've had together. And she's been able to sort of ruminate on that stuff. And the Hannah that we meet in As the World Burns is a Hannah who has been able to sort of take all of this angst, this unsettled sort of emotional information that she's gotten from Ben, and put it into perspective for Ben and for Addison in a way that they couldn't do for themselves, because everything's at breakneck speed for them. And for Hannah, it's like she's in slow motion, and she's able to sort of take everything and process it and give them the gift of almost hindsight,
Sure.
which I think is pretty powerful. So I really felt that in that scene as well. And of course, the other side of that scene that I really liked was the project end, where they're seeing this equation come together, and you're sort of like, oh, okay, we're getting the pieces together for what we were working on, and you just see all this sort of storytelling come together in this wonderful climax that gives you so much hope, which is sort of like one of the tenets of the show, right? So I just thought that really worked all well together. Well, I'm curious what your thoughts were of that scene. What did you take from that?
Well, I mean, I think you hit on some beautiful points and some things that I hadn't necessarily thought about in that way yet. In particular, about Hannah having added context and the benefit of hindsight, because for her, like you said, it's been decades since she first met Ben, and she's had time to think about their interactions and what he's shared with her about what life has been like at the project, and what his relationship with Addison is like, etc. And and she's also, of course, had time to work on this theory and this code. For me, I think that the emotional core of the scene was just so incredibly strong, and the work by both actors in the moment was so honest and and thrilling in that way, that when you see two people so connected to the story that they're telling and the truth that they have to give to that moment, it just, it takes you away, right? It engages you in the way that you want, any piece of work to engage you. We were talking off mic about something else, another piece of art that unfortunately did not do that, for us. And so when you have this, this moment that is so incredibly important to the fabric of the season, and for it to, just to hit every right note on every level, from the way that it's shot to the writing, to the performances, to the editing, to the way that the storytelling bounces back and forth between the project, and we get to see the perspective of these two people that are so invested in saving their friend, right, in Jen and Ian, and that they are almost they're not disregarding the danger that Hannah is in, but they're taking a moment to celebrate what could be, a win for the team and a win for the project and the win for them and the win for Ben, while also kind of recognizing the stakes, in the moment for Hannah. And so, yeah, I just loved it. And of course, yeah, I mean, the conceit of the scene with them, not really being able to communicate with one another. Sure, Addison can see and hear everything Hannah says, but Hannah can't see Addison or hear Addison at all. And so there's a lot of faith that's involved, right? And I just think that the overall spirituality of the last couple of episodes in particular was something that, I just hope it has not been lost on people. And I don't think it is. I think I've seen plenty of comments and plenty of, conversations that have taken place online, whether it's Reddit or Facebook or Twitter or whatnot, about the very nature of people believing in each other, people believing in love. It reminds me of that Joe Strummer quote, where Joe talks about how without people you're nothing, and that, and I think that the show leans heavily into that, and the spiritual side of that, the idea that we're all connected to one another. And so very specifically in this moment, of course, Hannah is articulating the fact that Addison and Ben are connected, and regardless of how far that bond gets stretched, it'll always come back together.
Right.
So I just think it's such an incredible scene with incredible work from both of them. And, you mentioned Jeffrey earlier and the performance of Wyatt Parker. And I think that the scenes between him and Ben are just fantastic. And in particular, when, it's easy for me to imagine that being able, like for Hannah, for Eliza, the actor, to be able to tell Ben, go save my son, that's probably something that's pretty easily relatable for her, just as a human being.
Yeah.
And then for Ben to have to go, to leave her and go to Jeffrey, and the scene that they share is also incredibly important and incredibly creative and inventive, and that there was a lot of freedom for these actors to play, both Ray and Wyatt. And I think that comes across in that scene. The building is burning around them, and there's, Jeffrey's got a lot of anger and a lot of resentment. And of course he does, of course he does, especially after what we learn in Against Time with the circumstances of his father's death. But it just felt like the environment that Pamela, the director, and, not to plug my own show, but if you go and you listen to that interview that I did with Pamela, like, she talks a lot about kind of, these are my words, not hers, but setting up like the playground for them, and giving them the freedom to really just go after one another. And in particular, seeing in Wyatt the instinct already being there, and just finding ways to bring it out even more. To the point that there was some stuff like, where there was a big fuck you, that obviously is not in the episode because, it's a network, but that was the pitch that they got it to in order to have that scene between the two of them, which plays so well. And what's fascinating to me about that, and it is interesting because you talked earlier about the fact that you almost can't, in spite of it not being planned this way, you almost cannot separate these two episodes from one another now, especially having aired together. Yeah. And the way that this scene mirrors the scene in the garage later on in Against Time is so interesting to me, because, I think inarguably the convincing that it takes, to get Jeffrey to come with Ben in Against Time is more difficult than it takes to get him out of the burning building,
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And to kind of let go of his dad's things.
Right.
But, he saves the letter, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's my long way of saying that I just think, I thought that the episode was fantastic. I think on every level, I think it's probably Ben and Derek's, best episode from a writing standpoint. I think that, It's, you know, it's hard to say because I think that this episode and Secret History are so very different. You know, I don't want to, I don't want to like sacrifice either for the other, if you will, to put either one above the other. But as far as like Pamela's direction goes, I think she does some really great inventive things here. And, you know, we talked about again in that interview, and it's something that I talked with Chris Grismer about a lot too. And I can't wait to release that interview about limitations and how sometimes those limitations create artistic opportunity, because you might not necessarily have the millions of dollars that some of these, you know, like these HBO shows have, for instance. So you have to start getting creative and thinking about what can I do? How do I do this under the limitations that I have?
And I
And
particularly liked the scene where they had to force themselves through the fire.
yeah,
Because I felt like it was shot in a way where you felt like you were with them. Like it was from their perspective. It was these great close-ups, and you know they're using pacing and a lot of really tight editing to sort of create a feeling. But if you think about it, it's like, oh, they also were able to probably save a lot in terms of having to create this entire set and special effects and things like that because they're playing it so close. But it was so effective to the point where I think that this is a more effective way to do it. You can have a big enough budget in the world, but this, you know, putting you in right close into the perspective of the characters feels much more affecting than having some big, you know, wide, you know, late Kurosawa kind of shot of the of all of them busting out of the room.
right.
Really worked for
Flames
me, so.
just, you know, surrounding the
Exactly.
picture. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And it's funny you mentioned that scene in particular because it should still be accessible because I don't think it was in stories only. I think it was actual posts. But if you go and you look at some of the Instagram posts from around when the episode aired, there are some wonderful behind the scenes footage of how they shot that basically.
Cool.
So, you know, at the risk of going on too long about this episode, I will ask then, of course, that, you know, the final scene between Hannah and Ben, I just thought was so lovely. You know, I loved the music. I loved the dialogue. I loved what Hannah had to say. I loved the juxtaposition of that scene with Jeffrey reading the letter. I'm curious as to your thoughts on that scene, if there's anything in particular about that. I have a noisy cat at my feet.
I thought the scene worked really well on a couple of levels, and one as sort of a possible goodbye between these two characters. Of course, that doesn't end up truly being the case, but you're sort of. I think this is part of the reason why these two episodes feel so linked, because you've got this big twist that happens, and it's almost like the twist starts at the end of this episode during this scene, amidst this loving goodbye and amidst this final message where it's like, I'm going to help bring you home. That's the thing that I can do for you.
Yeah.
And underneath all of that, there's this strange underbelly where you're seeing this other thing happening on the sidelines, and you're seeing this kid who very believably is filled with rage, and because ironically he doesn't have control over what has happened to him, and Ben doesn't have control over what has happened to him. And basically you've got this mother saying, like, you know, to Ben, like, I'm gonna give you control back, and you've got her son over here kind of be like, that's what I want.
Right.
That's the thing that I'm looking for. And it creates for me like this sort of dichotomy where you've got Hannah has spent all this time and effort trying to do this thing for Ben, and you've got her son over here who is on his own. And then, you know, as that twist continues to happen into the beginning of 213, you get to see that scene from a different perspective, which is one of my favorite moments from that episode, where you go through and basically you get to see these leaps from Jeffrey's perspective without uh, without Ben's song in the leaks. You see these, and you see how confusing it would be for this kid, and you see how out of place these moments are. And so it's hard for me to think of the scene in 212 without thinking of sort of the reprise scene in 213, because I feel
Yeah.
like they're so linked, because you've got these two different stories playing out. You've got the sort of triumphant, loving, beautiful culmination of Ben and Hannah's arc, but then you've got this underbelly where it's like, oh, there's going to be consequences for all of this that
Right.
we don't quite understand, and that which leads, of course, to the unmasking of Jeffrey at the beginning, right at the very beginning of 213, which I thought was a great choice too.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just do it. Let's move into Against Time. And I think that, honestly, any conversation about against time, it really, you cannot have it without talking quite a bit about Gideon Ridge as played by James Frain. And I think that, the scene towards the beginning of the episode when Gideon has, jumped into the imaging chamber and, seeing Ben and Gideon face off in the way that they do and getting, this information. I mean, it really, I've said this before, but it really is, damn near Shakespearean, in terms of just the, where the rage comes from, this revenge tragedy that's playing out in front of us, and the lengths to which Gideon is willing to go in order to exact that revenge now upon Ben for, as he sees it, destroying his life.
Right. And I love how that scene starts, because it's it's played not quite for laughs, but of course Ben has no idea who this person is, and he thinks he's about to get hit by that car, and then suddenly it's like, oh, you're in the imaging chamber. You're that rich guy. And yeah, I think that there's something so affecting about James Frain's performance in this episode, and of course, starting with this scene. And I will say that I think that something that really blew me away was the consistency between the two performances of this character in the episode, where you really saw the threading of the needle between this teen and this middle-aged guy. Like you saw the trajectory. You saw that they were the same person. There was no doubt. Like it was just complete verisimilitude. Like it just you were there for it, which I thought was. I mean, that's like I don't know how that happens organically. I think it's just maybe two performers really understanding the character and being really good at playing it.
Yeah.
Because it would be tough to, coordinate that.
I will say, I do think part of that comes from, and I know that this was something that Deborah Pratt, kind of gave James as far as direction goes, that so much of who Gideon is wrapped up in this 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
He never progressed emotionally from that point, intellectually,
so
physically. Yes.
For a tech bro.
Yeah. Right.
I also appreciated that there was a fair amount of sort of social commentary in terms of who the villain was, in this season ultimately, and the idea of having so much power and money and influence, but lacking any sense of purpose for it that might be at all altruistic. I thought hit really hard, and I thought that, I mean, the episode does something which I think is unique, just generally, which is it it is basically, the big climax is, it's not like, of course there's all these things that they need to do. We need to save this person's life. We need to get there in time. We need to save the future and all this stuff. But those are all
Right.
MacGuffins. It's basically, I'm going to teach you how to be empathetic.
Yeah.
It's like a lesson in empathy. It's a very straightforward lesson in empathy, and I think that you look at James Frain and the way that he plays this character, and he plays it as someone who is almost completely lacking in anything close to empathy, and and I think that is such a wonderful juxtaposition in this particular scene with Ben, who just drips empathy from his pores.
Right.
It's like mixing water and oil. It's just like these two things are, they're so the confrontation. It's like a yin and a yang, and I thought that scene did a really good job of sort of laying that out with everything that they said to each other. And the tragedy wrapped in it, of course, is that in a way, Jeffrey is a result of Ben's altruism, of his empathy,
Yes.
in a roundabout way. And,
Right.
The entire episode is Ben trying to reframe that for young Jeffrey and try to say, hey, yeah, the world's messed up. You could absolutely look at it like this. Or you could look at it like this. And boy, oh boy, life is going to be a lot better for you if you could try to see things from this perspective and take off the blinders and look at all these other people around you and realize that they matter as well and that you can have effect on their lives. And I just liked how the seeds of that story were laid really well in this initial confrontation, and just the performances were incredible.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that, one of the things that that carries through the episode as a whole, like he says, is that empathy engine, and Ben's desire to ultimately teach Jeffrey how to save a life. You don't have to destroy something in order to feel better, right? That helping can be the way to that, to resolving that anger, that hole, that what you're missing. And of course the scene where Ben is standing over the computer with the hammer, it's just like that.
And that's really that's the
quantum
moment.
leap.
That's the moment in the episode where it all comes down to this one man out of time who has a gut feeling that this is wrong. Or something like what I'm trying to think of. If you read Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, he talks about, it's been years, so if I'm like butchering this, people like go easy on me. But he talks about different types of law that exist, and he talks about human law. And then he talks about something that he refers to as divine law, and he's talking about this in terms of the civil rights struggle. And he talks about, divine law is that law that is written on the human heart, the one that we don't have to have any documentations or pieces of paper or governments or anything else to tell us is in fact true. And you just think in that moment, Ben is thinking about, okay, Ziggy's saying this, we have these statistics, this is the thing. No, there's something written on my heart as a person with, my personality, with my empathy, that's telling me that this is not the path that is going to get us to the best solution for everybody. I have to do something else. And he takes that leap. And I just thought that was that was the moment of the season, that one moment.
Yeah.
That was it. For me, at least.
I mean, I think one could potentially argue that there is one other moment in the episode that might outdo it, and we'll get there in a second. But before we do, let's talk about some of the Easter eggs real quick. The most obvious one, the one that I right away hit me was, of course, the scale replica of Al's car from Leap for Lisa.
Yes, yeah, and I had
That
recently
Jen ends up
watched that
using.
episode, so that was fresh in my mind, which was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I had for designing this poster, I had to do a little deep dive because I'd watched the episode, I had an idea of a layout in mind, and thankfully it's so funny. Like I knew, okay, I want the stock car the the top angle, and if you've seen the poster, you know what I'm talking about. It's like an
yeah,
angle shot of the car, and I was like, I need to figure out what this car is, and it is a 1975 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme stock car, which I had to figure, out. But it's funny because my family, one of the cars that we had growing up was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. So I was able
wow,
to clock that pretty fast. It wasn't a 75, it was an 85. So it was even more kind of boxy and less cool because at that point, in the mid 80s, it was just
yeah,
like we're driving tanks around. But the car stuff is so funny. Like you sort of have the juxtaposition between Ben driving around this powerful stock car, and then you've got this little RV car driving around distracting people at the
yeah.
project. I thought that was a nice little juxtaposition between the Leap and the project stuff. But yeah, and a very cool Easter egg in an episode very filled with a lot of Easter eggs for the original series.
Well, there was another one that I think a lot of people missed, and I have the benefit of having someone point it out to me that would obviously know, um, and that's the shirt that Casey Jarrett, the sister of the Leap host and daughter of the man that Ben's there to save. The T-shirt that Casey is wearing is a Carly Farmer concert tour T-shirt.
I missed it.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's
which of course, Fellow Travelers was another Drew Lindo episode from
great.
season one. But yeah, I just little stuff like that, just so brilliant, so wonderful. Now, of course, the big thread, and one of the other scenes I think that might be in contention for like scene of the episode in a way, of course, has to be the scene with the reveal of why Beth and Janice are helping the Rogue project team. I mean, that scene.
They started playing that.
Yeah.
The score. It's just like, oh man, wow.
Yeah.
Like,
and it
all been waiting for.
And it did this thing that I know I've mentioned to you before. I know that I've talked about it on the podcast before, going all the way back. What was that, like 4 years ago almost, to when Dennis and I originally finished the run of the classic series. That it had always been in my mind that when Sam sits Beth down and says those words, "I'm going to tell you a story,"
yeah,
that's exactly what he does, and that Beth has known everything the entire time. That she has been the keeper of the project in so many ways, and ensuring that things happened in such a way that it didn't disrupt things, that there was no big butterfly effect like there was in this episode, right? And this confirms that that's true. That she's
cool?
always known. That's
right.
Fucking awesome.
It's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
And to have that as canon or whatever you want, and for them to all be in the know. Yeah, it's wonderful, and it's giving the fans what they want. Which is nice, and if you could do it in a way that is organic, which it absolutely was.
Yeah.
And again, like you're building on the story arc from season one, which is really nice,
right?
And sort of bringing all that together, and and I refuse to say that this has series finale vibes because bringing all that together, I just feel like it was a nice culmination of everything that has come before now, and I just that was a wonderful scene. I think what I was saying before in terms of the scene with Jeffrey's computer. I feel like that is the scene of the season when it comes to the culmination of that kind of story point. But obviously, this scene is it's almost like this more of an overarching, story point going back to the original series, which is what was so wonderful about this episode, is that it felt like it was able to do everything over the course of 40 odd minutes, which was very impressive. Like, I don't know anybody who didn't like this episode, and I don't want to know anybody who didn't like this episode, frankly.
Right. Well, I mean, I obviously there's more we could say, and the episode is so incredibly beautiful in so many ways. But I think that the final thing that really ties everything together, and I think has the emotional impact that has been built by moments like that with the computer, for instance. It starts with the final scene between Ben and Hannah, in the stands in at the racetrack, and Hannah lays it out as plain as day. And I think it's kind of interesting to me that there are people that are maybe missing what she's saying, because there's a lot of people that are much in the same way that you had people at the end of season 1 speculating who came through the accelerator, who's going to be there, who they never answered that question. And it's like, nobody came through the accelerator. That's the whole point. Like, they thought that they were going to get Ben back, but they didn't, and much in the same way, I think that there are a lot of people that are like, well, who swapped? It's like, nobody swapped. Like, that's the whole point of the code.
I didn't even think about that.
Like Hannah, right? Because Hannah states it plain as day. It's like home isn't a place; it's a person.
Right. That seemed pretty clear to me. I don't know.
Right.
I don't go online enough, Sam. I don't know.
I don't think that's a bad thing. But all that said, we get this beautiful scene between the two of them, and then of course we come back to the present and we see that everything's changed from Madison's point of view. Yes. Jen is alive. Which
we got to talk about that too. I just want to talk about that. Really, just how great that scene was, and Nanrissa just killing that scene so good, and you just the whole cast, because it's such an emotional moment, and the rest of the cast having to play it, over the phone, not being in the room.
Yes,
I just thought it was incredible, and it just makes Gideon / Jeffrey just such a just such a villain. Like just
irredeemable.
So good. You go on. Just everything has been transformed. What I found interesting about that scene is that Addison is in the imaging chamber at the second location, and she comes out of the imaging chamber at HQ. So she has literally moved locations from one imaging chamber to the other, which is pretty incredible.
She's already leaped.
Right, exactly. Right. Which, makes, again, it's a TV show, but you can make that make sense with the fact that there's been this butterfly effect. And if she's at the center of it, then she would, I guess if the imaging chamber at the secondary place has the same timey-wimey that the one at the main project does, then that kind of thing could be possible.
Right.
That makes sense. That's my headcanon for it. But
I like it. I'm with you. I'm with you. I didn't even think to mention that in the review, the solo review. But the scene, the scene that then takes place, and you really start to, when you really start to put all the pieces together, you start to realize that in a way, the past 2 seasons have functioned just as much as an origin story for Ben Song as they have for Addison Augustine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that the Addison that stands there and tells everyone that she's going to go into the accelerator because they still get to swap code, that she's going to swap herself for Ben. She's ready. in a way that the Addison that was training to be the leaper was never ready.
Yeah.
And I think that that's beautiful. And I think part of it is because Ben, the funny thing is that Ben saves Jeffrey, right? And in a smaller way, one could argue he also saves Addison, because he gives Addison the example of we don't have to break this.
Right.
There's a better way.
Right.
And equipped with that, she's now ready to be the leaper. She's ready to be, the empathy engine that
Right.
Sam Beckett was, that Ben Song is. And so it's just a really lovely moment. And Caitlin is phenomenal in that moment.
Yes. So good. And, it felt so right. I'm going to mention one thing off topic that just because I thought of, Addison going into the accelerator, and she's got the typical QL leaping suit. I just wanted to shout out James Frain's goth leap suit.
Yeah, the black Fermi suit. Yeah,
I just thought that was such a chef's kiss. Like,
right.
Of course, he'd be like,
"Oh yeah,
get one in black."
emo tech boy is bringing his baggage in the form of a black Fermi suit, without a doubt.
It'll cost us an extra $10K, but yeah, we'll work.
Yeah.
There. But yes, I thought that I think you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, Ben literally saves Addison through the entire action of season 1, but all of this goes to kind of take her on a journey to perhaps make her a better candidate to be the leaper than she would have, because we've got a really great example in season 1 of how this can go wrong. You've got Martinez, who is completely focused on the mission, and
right.
And is totally fine with the idea of collateral damage, which was basically the situation that Ben was put in here. It's like, yeah, we're gonna mess up this kid for life in terms of his confidence, but at least he won't grow up to be this. And it's like, well, feels like I'm not prepared to take on that
right.
kind of outcome. And I think you're spot on. Like, I think that's as much of a moment for her as it is for Ben, and just to see her boldly going in there.
And I think that the other thing too is that, throughout most of season 1, Addison she was robbed of a lot of agency. And I think that went against the very nature of the character, which created a really interesting internal conflict. And I think we got to see that play out a little bit more through the first, 6 episodes of season 2 than we did the whole of season 1, although I do think it was present. And, this season gave her so much more agency. And one of the ways that it did that I haven't had a chance to articulate on the podcast yet, so this is the perfect opportunity. A lot of people speculated early on, even after we knew that was no longer the case, that Tom was going to be a villain of some fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Tom ever could have been a villain. I never thought that he was going to be the villain. You can check my work and go back and listen to other episodes. It's true. I never thought he was going to be a villain. I'm glad he wasn't a villain. And the number one reason why I'm glad that he wasn't a villain is because if he had been a villain in any way, it would have robbed Addison of the agency to be the one to break it off with him, to realize that that's what she needed to do for herself. And by him being a good guy, by him being someone that we could empathize and sympathize with, ultimately, it created a situation where Addison got to make the decision herself. It was not thrust upon her by realizing that her fiance or boyfriend or whatever is, the subordinate to the big bad of the season or whatever, And I think, again, that one of the themes of the season, as far as the character narrative goes, was reestablishing Addison's agency and preparing her to be a leaper, which, of course, she steps into the accelerator, she leaps. JJ, take it away. Tell me what you thought of the way that this season ended.
Well, we've talked in the past about how the revival of Quantum Leap is a continuation of the original show, but also a reimagining of the show in many ways. And I think that this final scene where we have not one, but two leapers together in one place, it is further evolving the show and what it can do. And it makes so much sense because I just love this stuff because, you know, you have, you know, this time travel premise. You've got one man alone in the past with only one connection to his time. And he has no control over where he leaps. And yeah, that's a great premise, but it doesn't have to stay that way. It does that.
Right.
That doesn't have to be the premise of the show forever.
Yeah.
And so to do this and to have two people, and you know, the closest thing from the original show that this reminds me of is, you know, Revenge of the Evil Leaper from season 5, where you have a dual leap happening, timey-wimey science stuff, cool things, and you know, when I remember, you know, the first time that I saw that episode, I thought, wow, what a cool take. That if you were to have two people, and there'd be a lot of pressure for them to stay together and to coordinate things like that. I love the possibilities of this new formula. And so my main feeling was super excited to see where they are running to as it cuts to black. And I hope we find out sooner rather than later is what I'll say.
Me
about
too.
that. Yeah,
me too. And I will say it's funny because I did read some comments about, you know, people thinking that there was something slapdash about the ending or something like that, which this is like the
that's so strange.
The smallest of the small minority, right?
Yeah, it just seems so like the entire season built thematically and literally to that moment.
Exactly.
Where you have these two characters that start miles away from each other, like decades away, but also so emotionally apart from each other because the amount of time that has passed for Addison, and that she has had to move on and basically have to bury her fiance. And the season was just about these two people realizing that they are home for each other. And of course, this is where the story ends for this season. Of course it is. It's so, that's what I loved so much about the finale. That's what I love so much about the season, is that it just was such a perfectly articulated thesis for the entire run of episodes, and that it was so wonderfully choreographed and written. And I just felt like this denouement was, you know, we'll rewatch this season and it'll all flow. So I would, for anybody saying that, maybe rewatch the season and see if you feel the same way.
Well, it goes back to what I feel like I've been saying for the past, 6 weeks now, is that the as we got closer and closer to the end of the season, it was becoming increasingly clear that everything from the beginning of this season all the way through to the end had intent and purpose behind it. Behind the narratives of these characters, how, their stories were being told, the emotional stakes of it all, and how that became the engine for the plot, not, some sort of meta plot or some sort of MacGuffin being the engine that drags the characters along. Instead, the characters got to drive that, and it was beautiful. And I agree with you. We have so much possibility, and I want so badly to see what's next. Addison's the cop and Ben's the, the handcuffed prisoner in the backseat of the car. Addison's the father and Ben's the daughter.
Right. Yeah.
Or what about a leap where they are separated by 50 some miles or something like that, and both of them have things that they have to do as they work their way back to one another to complete the ultimate goal of the leap or something, right?
Absolutely. Or the opposite. They're Siamese twins.
God damn it. But I mean, there's just so much. There's so much possibility, and furthermore, not only just those potential leap scenarios, right? But the character drama, the idea that these two people who have been torn apart for so long have now been brought back together, that they're one another's home, but there's still a lot of work to do. This isn't just hold my hand, don't ever let go, I love you, we're going to live happily ever after. There's in my mind, there's still a lot of work for these two people to do. And I just think that the character drama from that perspective is fascinating as well. And it's like they now have to almost get to know one another in a completely different way. Right. That this partnership has it's been kicked up a notch.
And you know what? Like you were alluding to. I mean, depending upon who they leap into, they're not necessarily going to be able to express themselves. In the way they want to, as two people who are in love.
And let's let's talk about that elephant in the room for a moment here, right? How comfortable are they going to be, right? How comfortable are they going to be if they're not, if they have not leapt into two people that have some sort of romantic relationship? Right. Will there be the opportunity to discuss that idea? It's like, right. Can we consent in this situation? Like, is this actually, this is strange, right? Like, are we, it's like everything that we've talked about with classic Quantum Leap. It's like the Wonder Woman 84 thing, right? Right. I think that there's something about it that does, it raises questions, and I just think that there's the opportunity to, to tell so many different types of stories. And I think the thing for me that really what they were able to do in that final scene is blow the doors wide open and say, everything that you thought Quantum Leap was, it still is, but now we're going to show you and prove to you it can be so much more. And that is exactly what any type of revival, continuation, etc. needs to be, should be, can be. I'm reminded of the Battlestar Galactica reimagining, right? It's like everything you thought Battlestar Galactica was, sure, it was, right? We can do all of that, but it can also be so much more. Think about the circumstances these people are in. Think about what, the way that you rebuild your society. Think about the way, asking all of those big questions. And now we have the opportunity in this, again, this very character-driven drama, this very, character-driven story to push that envelope further and again, blow the doors open and say, like, it can be so much more than that. And we can tell so many, different kinds of stories now. So I think it's just incredibly exciting. And as we wait to hear one way or another, I remain optimistic, but it's still thrilling to me that the possibilities exist.
Yeah, same. And I just don't want this story to end here. And, a lot of people saying, that this could be a natural or a fulfilling conclusion. And I mean, conceivably, but right. I don't know. I that's not how I was feeling in the moment. I wasn't feeling like, okay, they're together and now they can walk off into the sunset.
Right.
I think that there's more there. I think that the story begs to be continued. So I hope that it is.
When they grab hands and run towards the fire and that look on their faces, that to me is, I want to see the fires they run into. Right. I don't want to just be left with this moment. Right. And, I think that, again, I don't want to talk about it too much. And the chief reason that I don't want to talk about it too much is because the thing that often gets forgotten, especially with all the salacious, and I will just use that word, pieces that you see written on awful, horrible, toxic websites, and that people sometimes forget when we have these conversations. We're talking about people's jobs, their livelihoods, their
Absolutely.
passions,
100%.
the things that they've invested everything into to create this stuff that we love so much. And so I don't want to belabor this point. However, that said, we are in a situation where we do not know whether or not the show is going to be renewed for a third season. And I think the important thing that I can say, and I can say this with absolute 100% certainty, and it is one of the few times that I will pull this card. I can say it with just about more certainty than a lot of people out there, quite frankly, that are not directly involved with the show or the network. There is no decision that has been made one way or the other. There is no one's leaning this way or that way. There's no hints at this or hints at that. The stage is still standing. The sets are still standing. They have not dismantled anything. So we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense to me. I'm no expert, but generally, from how I understand these things work, is, you have shows that fit certain slots in terms of programming overall for a network. And you may have a hard time figuring out if a certain show fits a certain slot until you know what other slots are going to be filled. And, there's this thing in network television called, upfronts, where, they're figuring out what pilots are being ordered. And so you've got all these sort of pieces on the chessboard. And depending upon what pilots are looking good for the executives will have a direct effect on what shows are going to come back as well. Because they want to have a certain palette of programming for the season. And so it's really difficult to pick and choose what you're going to greenlight until you have a better idea of what other pieces are sort of at play, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that, that's at least how I see it. Of course, it would be, for fans of the show, so much easier if it was just like, this is definitely getting renewed.
Absolutely. And look, I think that the other thing is too that's important to note is that in a very recent interview, Aaron Underhill, who is the one that would have some say over these decisions at Universal TV, she's high on the show. I mean, and alludes to the fact that the network is incredibly impressed with the show. And that, you have to understand that ultimately the network is going to they're looking at things beyond just the ratings, which I think that it's so funny because we have access to this information in a way that we did not used to have. It was not always this easily accessible, right? And you'd always hear about the shows that were pulling 10, 15, 20 million viewers or whatever. Nobody pulls 10, 15, 20 million viewers anymore. You know what I mean? On a regular basis.
You're a football game, yeah.
Right. And it has changed so much. And in many ways, the networks have been playing catch up for a long time. And as they have their streaming services now and all these other things, they're still playing catch up in many ways. And the business has changed so much, and the strikes have caused such a tightening in so many ways. Networks aren't ordering as many pilots as they were. It used to be that you might see a network field as many as 10 or 15 pilots in a pilot season, and now we're hearing that some of these networks are only ordering like 2. Think about that for a moment. And when you only order 2, you're not guaranteeing that you're going to run with either one of them. Now, NBC has indeed announced that they did do a season order for one of the pilots already. So there will be a new show, but they had space anyway because La Brea is no longer going to be, on the network. So there's just so much that goes into it. And again, I think it's important to note that NBC does genuinely like the show. There are people, within Universal Television that really love and appreciate the show and appreciate what it does. And, to the point that, like, for these final few episodes, they were barely giving notes, and not because they didn't care, but because they were so pleased with what they were seeing. And I just
that's
yeah,
that's less to worry about on that end of the
absolutely
of that spectrum, which isn't anything to sneeze at. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you can't watch this season and not feel like this is a show that is operating at real high level. And and part of with the ratings thing, I mean, with the strike and everything, and this show came back on a different night at a different time.
Yeah,
and that's really tough. And I think that that's something that I would hope that the folks at NBC and Universal would take into consideration. Like, we moved this show, we moved it, at we moved it at a time when it hadn't been on the air for months, and then we brought it back on a different day. And so, under even the best circumstances, it's going to take an audience a little while to find the show again. They even come back.
Yeah, and the other thing that's been encouraging to me is seeing the number of people that have continued to talk about the show and talk about the finale specifically, and which is an indicator to me that people are watching it on Peacock. That people who did not watch it as it aired, are watching it on Peacock, that are watching it again, that are that are staying tuned into it. I mean, I have friends that I've spoken to that's how they watched the show.
Yeah.
And
so what I do anytime I'm leaving my house, I put on Peacock and I hit an episode of Quantum Leap for my cat, and then I go. And I just let the season play.
Exactly. Anytime I'm out of the house, if I'm going to be out of the house for 12 hours, it's on, so which I do think is the most important thing, because look here, let's talk about, some specific stuff. If you're seeing any headlines that are talking about, the show likely being canceled or disaster or whatever, any of these types of things, ignore it right away. Those are the sites that are just out for clicks. Most of them are toxic as fuck. Yeah. And they're predisposed to dislike this show for reasons. Make of that what you will. Second of all, I think that any sort of campaign to say, hey, NBC, renew this show, we love it, admirable, amazing, wonderful. Please do whatever it is that you are going to do. I'm not going to tell you, don't write your letters, they don't mean anything, or don't do this, it doesn't mean anything. What I am going to tell you is the thing that means the most is not a letter. It's not an email. It's not a tweet. It's not any of that. It is going to Peacock, heading over to Quantum Leap, and streaming the episodes. Do that. That is the number one thing you can do to show NBC and Universal Television that you want more Quantum Leap. The letters, the messages, all that sort of stuff. Again, I'm not saying don't do it. It certainly shows some support. But the thing that will actually get them to say we need to renew this show are the viewing numbers on Peacock for this series. Yeah. So stream.
You and I are the biggest physical media advocates that you will find. If you feel like watching season 1 of Quantum Leap anytime soon, and you have the Blu-ray, for now, leave it on the shelf, stream it on Peacock instead. Yeah. That would be my advice. So
yeah,
and then,
absolutely.
If you want to watch it again on Blu-ray, you could do that. Or if you want to have got 2 TVs, you have the Blu-ray on one, and then stream it over on Peacock on the other.
You could.
And if you see any differences in the master, let us know.
Please let us know. Look, I'm so thrilled and excited with where the show is left. I want there to be a season 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But not an 8.
Well, I think, look, if I'm being completely honest here, most shows are usually played out after 5 seasons. Some can get away with a 6th or 7th season, but after that, I can't think of many shows that really needed to run that long. I mean, look, The Simpsons certainly had some wonderful episodes on, the later. But yeah, anyway, point is that when it comes to Quantum Leap, I want more. I know if you're listening to this, you want more. So stream away on Peacock and see what we can do, so we can see Ben and Addison as they travel through time and what that means. And what if they end up like 10 years apart, right? But they're working on the same leap. Like, how cool would that be? Like, wouldn't that be really cool?
At this point,
yeah, exactly. The writers are like, stop talking.
If we had that idea before you did, we can't give you credit for that idea. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I'm so thrilled that we got the chance to do this, JJ, and I know again that there are people that wanted it, and we're certainly going to be talking more Quantum Leap, regardless of what happens. Quite frankly, we will definitely be talking more. I would love to be able to do, a bit of an overview of season 2, and then kind of just an overview of both seasons together, and kind of dig into some of that. And one of the things that I really want to do that has been, dormant pretty much since the new series came to be are the capsule reviews of the classic series. And so, at the risk of putting it all out there, I'm just going to ask you right here and right now, JJ, would you be my co-host for those capsule reviews of the classic series when the time is right?
Oh, I would. I'm honored. I'm honored at the question. Absolutely. And from my part, not only would I love to talk more about the classic show, especially now, there's this whole other element that you can discuss now that we've got the revival, which is fun, right?
Absolutely.
But I'm curious if folks would be interested in seeing me do some more classic episode posters for some time capsule episodes, because I've done a handful.
Oh yeah,
I know the show backwards and forwards. I'd love an excuse to do more, frankly. So if
we're gonna get a leap home out of you yet,
right? Leap home, leap back.
Look, when we get to Temptation Eyes, can you just promise to work in "I Want to Know What Love Is" somewhere on the poster?
It's just going to be the lyrics.
Just yeah.
Unless you buy the U.S. Region 1 DVD, then it will be blank. Everybody gets that reference.
Oh my goodness!
My buddy used to make fun of me because, I was, back when they were releasing the show on DVD, I'd get on my soapbox and like, here he goes again. I'm like, they don't have the original broadcast music for most of the episodes. And so I would have that episode on, and I would have him cue up on his stereo, I Want to Know What Love Is. And as soon as the moon came up, I'm like, now we can watch this.
Now we can watch this. Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating to me that there are people that will not be able to truly appreciate that aspect of owning physical media of television, because I feel like there are people, like we've crossed a threshold where owning television in a physical format is, people aren't necessarily going out and seeking out and buying the old shows the way that maybe we used to, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there was a time when, late 90s to mid 2000s, there was a time where it was just sort of like, I wanted all those old shows on DVD, right? And then depressingly enough, you started to figure out, it's like, what do you mean it doesn't have the original music?
Right.
What do you mean you replaced what in China Beach? You did what in Quantum Leap? You did, and luckily a lot of that has been restored. Obviously Quantum Leap, we were lucky enough to have that restored. The China Beach DVDs that came out, probably about 8 years ago or so, whatever, had most of the music restored.
We got Wonder Years on DVD.
Yep, I was just getting ready to mention that. Yeah, there's a couple, but there's a couple that are still missing in there. I think I think
they got like 95%. Music. I think that even the theme song is a little different. I think they're using a different version of the Joe Cocker. Yeah, and the same thing with Dawson's Creek as well. That's a show that was plagued with music changes.
Yeah.
But they were now able to, I think if you stream it now, which it's available, Dawson's Creek is available to stream in 4K. Yeah. It's
in a way that seems apropos if you think about it, with Dawson wanting to be a filmmaker and all. Like, there's something about that that's kind of poetic. The fact that I know that, by the way.
It is, but
Look,
it's
what can I say?
crazy.
It was on after Buffy. Okay, come on.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
We could also talk about the dark side of this show's going to be available in HD. It's like, oh, what did you do?
yeah,
What did you
right,
do to it?
right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
there are some dark tales there. Buffy is one of them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Babylon 5 was one of them. The new Blu-rays are actually quite nice. There's still look. The fact is, like, the special effects are never going to quite match up, but
That
it
was
looks a hell of a lot
the
better.
exact right thing for a show like Babylon 5 to do. And we've talked about DS9 before, and if they
Right.
could find some middle ground for DS9 for to have the scanned 35 millimeter in HD and then do some sort of up-res for the special effects, I think that would go a long way to
Oh yeah,
archiving this show. I don't
absolutely.
think that that's the end of the world. I
No, I
think when you
agree.
start taking shows and up-resing them and then also cropping them and then not spending any time on things like color timing, then that's when things get really, really ugly looking, which is
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. Um, But all that said, look, stream
Anyway,
the show. And hopefully we'll be talking about season 3. But in the meantime, we got a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about.
yes.
Again, I have an interview with Chris Grismer, director of Against Time, amongst others, that will be dropping very, very soon. I had to do a little extra editing work on that. I'll drop a note about that. But it was such a delight. He is just so fantastic. I loved it. I have an interview with Daniel James Chan, who is the composer for the show. Another
Yeah.
fun interview. And we got to just talk about all sorts of stuff with like music and setting moods and tones and emotions and that sort of stuff. And talking about like his favorite composers and, talking about some of our favorite pieces from film and television. And it was just a lot of fun.
Was this
So I'm
your
really
first
looking forward to
time
sharing that.
speaking with him?
It was, yeah, it was
That's
my
so
first time
cool.
speaking
Yeah.
with him.
We we communicated last year for a minute, and I get to talk to him a little bit about I think one of the standout episodes from season 1 in terms of the score, which was the Western episode. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to talk about that at all, but it's pretty cool.
We did. We did talk a little bit about that.
Okay,
And
that's good to hear.
One of the main reasons that we talked about it was also just, the idea of genre hopping in general and how exciting that can be, from a composer's standpoint. So I'm really looking forward to sharing both of those with you. I have one other interview in the works that I should be recording this coming Friday, and I can't wait to share that with you. And hopefully there'll be a couple of more after that. So lots of exciting Quantum Leap related stuff still in the pipeline that will be coming out over the next few weeks. And of course, JJ and I are going to get back to what we were doing during the break between Nomads and Off the Cuff, which is talking about some of the other stuff that we love. And, kind of tease this at the beginning of this episode, but it has been requested by more than 2 of you. That's going to be my new thing. But no, sincerely, it's been requested by a few folks that they want to hear us talk about Star Wars. And JJ and I want to talk about Star Wars. So it's the perfect fit. And we're going to kick things off, appropriately enough. It is the 25th anniversary this May of the release of episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I think
it all started.
Yeah. But I think it's an incredibly exciting place to start in some ways. And the main reason for that is because I think that there are elements of the film that can be kind of divisive amongst the fandom. While I do think that overall the prequels have had a steady reevaluation over the past, 5-10 years or so, and people are appreciating them more and more. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the people that saw them in theaters when they were 7 and 8 and 9 years old are now, in their 30s, and and that nostalgia effect kicks in, and that kind of certainly helps, etc. But I just think it's also a wonderful place to start. It is the beginning of the story in so many ways, as a prequel.
And I think more personally for us, you hear a lot of folks, a lot of Gen Xers saying, oh, and I was a kid, I went and I saw the original Star Wars, and Phantom Menace, that was it for our generation. We were the ones who were. I was in middle school when it came out, and there was all of this hype, and we were the ones who were going to the theater and see this thing. So that it feels, regardless of how you feel necessarily about the quality of the films, that was, I think, for our generation, that those were the movies that hit at that time for us. So it makes sense for us to talk a little bit about that.
Well, and I think that too, one of the things that we'll eventually talk about as well, maybe not with the Phantom Menace, but just in general, because I do think that we'll get multiple episodes out of this little thing called Star Wars, is that the way that it was certainly presented at the time is like these last three things, this was going to be it.
Right.
That we weren't going to see anything else, right?
Right.
And then obviously, we got the Clone Wars, which was awesome, but there was still that idea that like when the Clone Wars kind of petered out towards the end and didn't really resolve all the stories that it had initially set out to resolve, there was kind of this idea that's like, oh, maybe this is it. And then of course it was like, no, everything's back. We're going to give you the last season of Clone Wars. We're going to give you 3 more movies plus 2. We're going to give you TV series. We're going to, and now of course the machine is just going. And, but at the time, especially when episode 3 came out, like there was this very real idea that this is it.
Yeah.
This is it.
This is the last hurrah.
Yeah. And it's, it's incredible, obviously, that it wasn't. But I do think that, that there was for people, in our age group, our bracket, if you will, there was definitely a lot of investment kind of just emotionally into these stories because we grew up watching, the original trilogy on VHS. And, I mean, just wearing those tapes out, right? You're going to break my heart because I don't have mine anymore. And it makes me so sad that I don't.
Yes.
Yep. But anyway, all that said, yes. So we are going to start our conversations, because I'm sure there will be many, about Star Wars with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I know that there are some people that we've had the pleasure of talking to on this show, or that I've had the pleasure of talking to on this show in the past, that happen to like that little property a bit themselves. So maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to get some of those folks to come on and talk about Star Wars, since they've already come on and talked about Quantum Leap, which could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think that on top of that, I'm very fortunate to be an official Star Wars artist.
What?
Yes. And so, maybe, possibly, in coordination with us dropping a little episode about Star Wars, we could tie in maybe some sort of, I don't know, artwork giveaway. Something.
Yeah. Get some of those puzzles.
Yes. Details to be decided. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but I will say this. That if you've made it this far and it's the first time ever watching, thank you. But make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified whenever new episodes drop. So you won't miss anything, especially those opportunities to take part in some awesome giveaways for JJ's incredible artwork. Head over to jjlendl.com. Click on that Star Wars button, and you're going to get to just see some of the awesome stuff that he has done. Sadly, the Phantom Menace print is sold out, but you can still look at it and still appreciate it for what it is. And then go and, let the FOMO hit in and buy every single other one so they don't actually get sold out.
That's how, because these are all, when you're working with limited edition prints, if there's something you want and you can afford it, just get it. Don't be kicking yourself down the line.
For sure. And of course, while you're there, you can also...
I do mean it.
While you're there, you can also head over to the Fates Wide Wheel storefront, and you can check out the amazing merch there, including the t-shirts, the hats, all of the Quantum Leap Season 2 episode posters, including that awesome Secret History one, which we adore, and as do the people who made the episode. Well, it's an occupational hazard, right? When you're dealing with two exhausted parents. Yeah. So speaking of which, it's time for us to go home. But
Yes.
I just want to say, JJ, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the finale and you know and everything else. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait to do more. And you know, just for everyone, so everyone knows, we will be back in 2 weeks. I open a show next week, so it's going to be busy for me. But after that happens, there'll be a little free time in the evenings again, and we'll be talking about the Phantom Menace, which I'm looking forward to. So thank you very much, JJ.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, all of you, thank you so much for listening, watching, liking, subscribing, following along. Patrons, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for keeping me going. Thanks for, you know, making me think on those mornings when I'm just sitting there going, I don't know if I have it in me to post a reel, or do I need to fire off a tweet, or do I need to do this, or do I need to do that? And then I think about the fact that there are people that follow along and enjoy this and are a part of this and feel like a community, and I feel uplifted. And all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to look into the camera, and I just want to tell people, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and I'm glad you're here, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you're enjoying all of this too, because I know I am. So leave a comment, tell us what you think. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, stay safe out there, and always follow in the footsteps of Sam, Ben, and Addison, and leap responsibly.